I think, oh, sorry, yeah. Thank you, Elisa and Lily, for creating this virtual space with Centro. As Elisa said, I'm Luis Poza, pronouns he, him, él. I'm a professor in the College of Education, specifically in the Department of Teacher Education. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Magdalena Barrera, who is now the Interim Vice Provost for Faculty Success, who provided some of the material that I've used in this slideshow from when she gave this workshop in the past. So we're going to talk about just how to appreciate those assets that we're bringing with us to college, right? Getting to college can feel very daunting, right? And it can feel that way individually, and then there can be all these social forces that make it even more so. But we want to recognize the strengths that we carry that can help us succeed, right, in the face of that. So we're going to start with a little bit of introduction, just getting to know each other a little bit. And it's luckily there's not very many of us, so we should be able to build some good productive community. I'm going to give a little history and theory about kind of how did we get to this place where we need frameworks like community cultural wealth, and kind of why they became relevant. And then we'll go into the community cultural wealth model itself to think about how it can support us in facing the challenges relevant to higher ed. And then you'll have a chance to really work, especially since it's a small group, you'll be able to work together and do some thinking around that before we close with a reflection, right? So hopefully when this is all said and done, you'll be able to describe the different dimensions of community cultural wealth. There's obviously not a test or a quiz or anything like that, but for you to understand that there are these multiple dimensions of strengths that you bring with you, right? So to be able to recognize those, that we'll be able to identify our own community cultural wealth, right? Some of those strengths as they are really specific to us and to our context, and then to apply those strengths to some of our common challenges that we might face. So just by way of introduction, I'm going to ask if you can share name and your preferred gender pronouns, if you'd like to share that. Your hometown, major or possible major if you haven't declared one yet. And then, these are tough, trying times. So just in the spirit of orienting towards strengths, what's one thing you're proud of so far this week? And if it's joining a webinar that was voluntary, that's fine. You can, that takes effort too, right? So one thing you're proud of, and then maybe one value from your family or community that you bring with you to San Jose State. So I'll again kick us off just to model. So again, Luis Poza, most students and colleagues call me profe, preferred pronouns, él, he or him. My hometown is, I guess, Santiago, Chile, and then San Francisco. My expertise, right? My doctorate is in educational linguistics and sociology of language. So I look at how race and language intersect in schools. One thing I'm proud of this week is doing this webinar. So I'm always excited to be affiliated with Centro and to be able to support the programming there. So I don't get to work with undergrads very much in the teacher education. So, but it is a piece of being an academic that I value very highly. So I'm proud that I was able to protect the time and to do this. And one value that I bring with me to San Jose State. So my parents are Cuban and emigrated to the US after the revolution. And one thing they always stressed was, respect and work ethic. And I think that was always an area of disconnect for me sometimes, was seeing how casual some of my peers were with faculty and things like that. And I always carried that respect that you have to talk a certain way to your elders. You have to maintain a kind of a social distance with them, not in the way that we're using social distance in COVID times, right? That at first inhibited me from doing things like going to office hours, but now I see it as a value that I can draw strength from, because I also share that respect with my peers and with my colleagues. And having that respect, I've learned to reframe that respect from distance to admiration for the strengths that they bring, right? And looking for the strengths that they bring. So Nu, you were the first to log in, so I'll invite you to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Như. My hometown is Vietnam. My major right now, liberal study, preparation elementary teacher, and a minor is a special ed. I'm proud of this week. This week I spent a lot of time to take back in the series, the Bay Area for the teacher. Yeah, from Monday to Friday, and my my cousin helped me to bring me to San Jose State University, and when I come here, I very feel happy and proud of me. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Great, thank you, Nu. Jackie, how about you?
Hi, happy Thursday. I'm Jackie. I use she, her pronouns. My hometown is Pasadena. It's a suburb of like LA. Like if you're going to Disneyland, it's on the way. My major is child development with a community focus. Something I'm proud of this week is a lot. I don't know. I guess I'll just say finding my balance day by day. That's like a big accomplishment, especially with it being mid semester for everyone. And a community value I bring with myself to San Jose State would be just like that hardworking ethic, like always just finding ways to be involved and just, yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm impressed that you found balance. I may need you to give an academic resilience series someday. Francisco, how about you?
Hi, my name is Francisco Garcia, and my preferred pronouns are he or his. And then my hometown is Oakland, California. My major is kinesiology, well, my possible major, kinesiology. And I'm proud of completing a midterm this week. And one family or community value you bring. A community value I bring to San Jose State would be respect. I respect everyone and I'm open to everyone's beliefs, and I'm just an open person to different things.
Thank you. Congratulations on getting past the midterm. Those are always intimidating. Jocelyn.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn. My hometown is Morgan Hill. I major in biomedical engineering. What am I proud of this week? I started my assignment a few days before it was due. Usually I'll start it the day of, and yeah, I'm a bad procrastinator. One family, a value I bring is just like taking care of my close friends. Like school is stressful, so like we'll take care of each other, like make sure we eat or studying good. And just community within my friends.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name, Jocelyn.
No worries, I go by that as well.
Karina, how about you?
Hello, my name is Karina Castro. My preferred pronouns are she, hers, and my hometown is San Jose, California. And my possible major is political science. One thing that I am proud of this week, it's more of a general thing, I guess, is just coming back late from work and then still keeping up with my assignments and then turning in everything before like it's actually due. So that's one thing that I'm proud of. And one family or community value that I bring to SJSU is humbleness and generosity. I believe that I can accomplish all these things and do all these stuff, but still be humble about it and still help those around me and not be selfish.
Very cool. Thank you. Liliana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liliana Alonso. I'm a graduate student. This is my last semester. I'll be graduating, doing my master's in counseling. And what is the other? My hometown is Los Angeles. Something I'm proud of this week. I think now that I'm a graduate student and graduating, I definitely found my balance as well. And I'm just very proud of how ahead I am in school, considering that I also have a full-time job. And what was the last thing? One thing I bring to SJSU is just being caring, and caring for myself and caring for others, and just really listening and being there for people.
Thank you, Liliana. And sorry, I skipped ahead a slide. Lily, Elisa, do you want to introduce yourselves as well?
Yes, thank you, Luis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lily Pinedo Gangay, and I'm the program director of the Chicanx Latinx Student Success Center. I majored when I was in undergrad as I was a history major, and also I minored in education. And I received my master's actually here from San Jose State in educational counseling. So all of those, all that study prepared me to be able to support you all very holistically with advising and all these different programs that we put together here through Centro. So I'm really excited that you're all here with us this afternoon. And a family value that I bring from my home and definitely also my community is the value of paying it forward. To our community. My dad was very much involved in the community here in San Jose. I was born here in San Jose, California. And so definitely being engaged with the community and serving the community is a value that I hold near and dear to my heart because it's something that my father taught me. So thank you.
Hi everyone, again my name is Elisa Aquino. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm originally from Los Angeles and my major was in Latin American Latino studies and sociology. And something that I am proud of this week is resuming meditation and my breathing exercises that I was doing, but I kind of stopped after a while, and so I'm back at it again. And one family value that I bring with me to SJSU is the value of reciprocity. So, you know, as an undergraduate, I had the, you know, privilege of having a lot of mentors and a huge support system that supported me during my time as an undergraduate. And, you know, now I want to pay it forward to other, you know, college students who might be also first generation college students, and, you know, just trying to support as much as I can. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you all. No, it's a privilege to be in community with you all today, and I'm really excited for the conversations we're going to have. So I want to start with a little bit of kind of a historical and theoretical walk up to community cultural wealth, right? And why scholars started generating this concept of community cultural wealth. So just a little show of hands or, you know, reaction, if you like, just around how many of you have heard of the term the achievement gap? Okay. Do you want to throw into the chat, those of you who've heard of the achievement gap, what have you heard about the achievement gap? Like what does it mean to you? What's a little one sentence definition? So a lot of inequity in education. Yeah. So, I mean, you're taking in the direction, right? Inequalities in receiving higher ed across communities. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, definitely if you're in the field of education, you'll hear the term achievement gap thrown around a lot. It's all over education policy conversations, right? They're always talking about how do we close the achievement gap? How do we close the achievement gap? And it's by very well-intentioned people, right? It's by people who really want to do better for those students who are on right, the lower end of the achievement gap, right? So students of color, students in poverty, students with disabilities, students learning English as a new language, right? Those are the students who we conceptualize as being on the bottom of this achievement gap, right? If we can think about it specific to higher ed, right? We know that Latinx individuals are underrepresented in the degree holding population, right? We're overrepresented in the push out rates at the high school level, right? So if you were to look at sort of the number of Latinx students who start in the K-12 system, right? That number goes getting smaller and smaller by the time you get to high school graduation, further constrained by the time you get to college graduation, even further. And then by the time you get to higher degrees, like doctoral degrees and advanced professional degrees, like law, medicine, things like that, we're grossly underrepresented. And this also becomes part of that narrative around the achievement gap. So it's usually test scores, right? And attainment, right? How much education do you complete? But the achievement gap very often puts the blame on the students themselves, right? Or on their communities. And this is part of what's called the deficit perspective, right? And it doesn't take into account what theorist Gloria Ladson-Billings calls the educational debt. And so what she calls the educational debt refers to the ways that systematically, and she uses it specifically around communities of color, right? The ways that systematically communities of color were deprived of opportunities for education. So if we look just at Latinx students, right, we can see there's over 4 decades worth of litigation to gain access to schools. So the first desegregation case related to Latinx students is Alvarez v. Lemongrove in 1931, which is in Southern California. A pretty famous one is Mendez v. Westminster School District, also from Southern California, and that's one that I quote below. Delgado v. Bastrop and Gonzalez v. Shealy. Delgado is in Texas, Gonzalez is in Arizona, right? And these were all state level opinions that forced school districts to desegregate, right? To allow Latinx students into their school systems, right? To undo the system of what was called the Mexican school, right? And this, you can see from the opinion in Mendez, right? They say the common segregation attitudes and practices of the school authorities and the defendant school districts pertain solely to children of Mexican ancestry and parentage. They are singled out as a class for segregation. So like I said, the districts had set up these things that they called the Mexican schools, right? And then they further say, when they undo the system of segregation, right, they say that the equal protection of the laws pertaining to the public school system is not provided by furnishing in separate schools the same facilities, textbooks, and courses of instruction, right? A paramount requisite in the American system of public education is social equality. Methods of segregation prevalent in the school districts foster antagonisms in the children and suggest inferiority among them where none exist. So if you ever do read the case, you'll see they go on to list that even that base level of equality, the same technical facilities, textbooks, and courses that they quote, that wasn't being provided either, right? The quote unquote, the Mexican school was vastly inferior qualitatively as well to the white schools. But they're saying even if they were materially equal, right, there is a social dimension to this that by virtue of segregating them, you're creating, right? And so when we talk about things like the achievement gap, we're not taking into account that there's this 40-year history of sort of depriving opportunity, right? So an important thing to note is that Gonzalez and all the cases before that are before Brown v. Board, right? The most famous school desegregation case, right? The one that outlawed school segregation nationwide and for all races, because these cases only banned it for Latinx students. But then even after Brown v. Board, we have other cases. We have Cisneros v. Corpus Christi in Texas, and then Keys v. Denver School District. And these were both in federal courts. And so again, Latinx students were being segregated even after the Brown v. Board opinion. So we have this historical educational debt, as Gloria Ladson-Billings calls it, right? That starts to explain, if students are going to inferior schools with fewer resources, that's going to be a part of sort of the educational opportunity landscape before them, right? So, but then desegregation came and they started doing all these equalization measures, and they tried to figure out, these disparities were still there, right? This achievement gap, quote unquote, was still there. And so James Coleman and some other sociologists put together a report to try to find it out. And they came up with this theory of cultural mismatch. And they also called it the culture of poverty, specifically around families that were living in poverty, which again, disproportionately mapped onto communities of color, right? But so they argued that, even if you integrated the schools and even if you provided more resources to the schools like of that system, right? Students in poverty and students of color had cultures that were incompatible with the culture that was expected of them at school, right? And so this cultural mismatch hypothesis really took hold. And so then schools started to take it on themselves, like, oh, it's not just, we don't just need to teach the reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? We also need to teach them the culture of school. And that became this very this heavily deficit framing of students of color, right? Suggesting that their home cultures were inadequate, were these deficiencies to be remedied. This comes from the idea of thinker Pierre Bourdieu, who considered forms of capital, right? And so he was thinking about, what does it take to succeed? So economic capital is what we can often think about just as, sort of your money, your property, right? These things that we conventionally think of as wealth, right? When they were integrating schools and increasing funding to schools, they saw that as increasing the economic capital of the education system for students of color. And they're saying, well, how come it's not working, right? And so people like Pierre Bourdieu and James Coleman, right, also thought through these ideas of social capital and cultural capital. So social capital is, there's that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's this idea of being into important groups, important social networks can help you out, right? If you have a friend who can connect you with that internship, right? You know a friend who's an attorney who can help you figure out, I don't know, how to save money on your taxes, whatever, right? So that it's that who you know, the importance of the relationships you have and the groups you're a part of, right? You can hear it a lot in business, right? That the people who get invited to golf with the CEO, right, are the ones who end up getting promoted and things like that. And then another one for our particular interest right now is the one of cultural capital, right? And so this was the idea that there are certain habits, certain values, certain practices that people of the prestige social classes have, that even if you give someone money, right, they're not going to replicate those things. It's the forms of speaking, it's the music they listen to, things like that, right? Right, the saying in Spanish, aunque la mona se vista de seda, mona se queda, right? This is the deficit framing of this concept of cultural capital, right? Is that just because you have material wealth, just because you kind of dress the part, you haven't shaken off those cultural practices that are framed as a deficiency. And so obviously, these models of social capital and cultural capital devalue the cultural practices of communities of color, and they devalue the social relationships of communities of color, right? So that's what brings us to this notion of community cultural wealth, right? And so Tara Yosso is the scholar who coined the term community cultural wealth. She's building on other forms of critical race theory and also on concepts of funds of knowledge, this idea that families have knowledge within them, right, that schools could be tapping into and bringing into the curriculum. And so community cultural wealth says there are all these cultural practices and relationships and things that communities of color have that can help us succeed in schools. But instead of always having to shape the student to the school should also be willing to shape itself to the community. Right? So if we go through, we go through the different aspects of community cultural wealth, there are 6 dimensions that Yosso pulls out particularly, right? So She identifies aspirational capital, right, which is this ability to want, right, to have ambition, to desire things. Familial capital, right, are our kin relations that give us strength, right, the family that we can count on when we need help, when we need support. Our social capital is our relationships, but instead of thinking about it in the way that Bourdieu does of who do you know that's in the culture of power, it's more who do you know that can help you out, right, that can support you, right? Navigational capital is our ability to navigate bureaucratic systems, right? Our ability to get through paperwork and like official processes and protocols, right? Who can help you navigate things like college admissions, things like course registration and matriculation. Resistant capital is the strength that we have from generations of resisting oppression and of advocating for our needs. And then linguistic capital is all our wealth of communicative resources, right? So schools used to punish students for not speaking English in class, right? For speaking Spanish in class or for using non-prestige varieties of English, right? Like African-American English or things like that. Those kinds of things were punished in schools. In some cases, they still are, right? But a community cultural wealth approach to education lets us recognize that our bilingualism and our bidialectalism, our multiple dialects, all our communicative resources are a strength that we can use, and they enrich our ability to express ourselves. Right? So we can think about all the different forms of strength and wealth that we bring to it. Right? And I want to, now you have this as a handout for yourselves. Because we're a small group, I think my hope was to bring us into kind of breakout groups so you could look at the two handouts you have. But I think since we're a small group, I'm going to invite us to kind of work together. So you should have two handouts, and I'm going to put the link to the other one here in the chat real quick. Right. So this is a document, if you want to take a look at it, that just kind of lists those 6 forms. And I'm also going to post the let me post the other one as well.
Excuse me, it says I need access to the document.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Oh, right. So instead of all writing, because I wasn't sure how many people we'd have, but I also think just in terms of making it more beneficial to you, rather than writing directly on this one, or is it not letting you see it at all? Or
Yeah, it's not letting me see it at all.
oh, okay.
It could be that you have it restricted for you.
Oh, to San Jose State.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you remove
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So let me change link then. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. And then the PDF that Elisa just put in the chat is the second one that has the handout. And so, what I'm inviting you to do now is kind of go through those different forms of wealth and just think through what it looks like for yourself. And actually, there is an even number of us, right? If we take out Elisa, myself, and Lily. So maybe what I'll do is Elisa, I don't have breakout room.
Yes, I can
Yeah.
do this. It's my first time doing this.
Sorry.
1 second.
Yeah. So while we get that set up, let's go through those 6 forms of capital again. We can take a look at that wheel, and we can start to think of examples for ourselves. And then in pairs, you all can start to think about your own kind of forms of capital, right? So are you all looking at this wheel right now, the cultural wealth wheel?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So aspirational capital, right? What goals and dreams do you have? Let me go ahead and drop something in the chat. What's a dream that you have for yourself?
And I've set it up so whenever you give me the go, I can hit the button.
Yeah, well, let's do a couple together, and then we'll go into breakout rooms, and you all can make a copy of that Google Doc for yourself, and you can fill out that Google Doc for yourself. So go ahead, drop something in the chat. What's a dream or an aspiration that you have for yourselves? Why are you giving up income to come to college? Maybe taking out loans and incurring debt, right? What is this going to do for you? What are you aspiring to? Take a couple minutes and drop something in the chat. Nice, a career that lets you travel. Yeah. Nice, helping people gain justice, so aspiring to a more just society. All right. These are powerful motivators. Any others? Okay, so we're going to go into breakout groups now for 15 minutes, right? And what I'd like in these 15 minutes is for you and your partner, right, to kind of go through the 6 levels of community cultural wealth and think through some of these assets that you have for yourselves, right? Right. Think of some specific examples relevant to you and your family. All right. So Elisa, whenever you want. All right, how did it go? What were some of the forms of cultural wealth that you identified for yourselves? Let's have 5 people drop something in the chat, and we'll move on. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I meant, okay, yeah, so linguistic capital and navigational capital. Okay. Oh, nice. So you're comparing, contrasting across years. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jackie. And yeah, and man, now this adds to your social capital, right? Now a freshman and a graduating senior know each other, right? And what can you learn from each other, right? If you keep in touch, and how can you draw on that as your social network just got bigger, right? All right. Yeah. So using your familiarity with the internet and stuff, so to help you navigate information around clubs and programs like Adelante and all that. Yeah. So, some people by benefit of who they know and all that might already know about programs like that, right? But you're able to draw on your own navigational capital, which is, I know how to look things up online. Yeah. I'm drawing that. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, did anyone identify some resistance capital themselves? You can type in the chat box, or you can also just speak up if you'd like.
I asked that just because we didn't quite get to that, but I'm also like really curious to see what people have to say about that.
You know, I'll share, you know, when I was a kid, my mother would, you know, always go over the receipt for the grocery bill. And if there was something wrong, like she'd make us think about it. And I'd always feel super embarrassed, right? But she said, nah, nobody takes advantage of us. Like we work for our money. We work hard for our money, and no one's going to take it from us, right? Like, you know, this is, you got to stick up for yourself. Like, even if it's an accident, they'll fix it. And if they're trying to play you, like, let them know that they can't. You know, and so that lesson, that resistance capital, has definitely served me well, right? Like when you get into the professional world, when you get into even academics, people are going to keep putting more and more work on you, right? Especially women of color, right? Women of color get disproportionately burdened with service work, right? And so it's helpful to have those models of what it's like to say, that's not my job, sorry. Like, you know, so anyway, that's resistance capital in my life I can think of. All right, well, so let's get back to the slides. And this piece is going to be a little more interactive as well. So, so I'm not going to go into the display mode, but we're going to go through some of the everyday challenges that you might find in a university setting. And together, let's think through some of the ways that cultural wealth can help us work through them, right? So this is one that we hear a lot, right? So I have something to say in class. I want to ask a question. I want to make a connection, but I'm afraid to sound stupid, right? This is especially around asking questions. Have you or anyone you know been in this position? So what forms of community cultural wealth could we draw on, right, to help us in this situation? So you're in a class and there's something that's not clear, perhaps. And you want to ask that question, but you're feeling insecure. You're worried that asking the question is going to make you seem stupid to peers or to the professor, right? Maybe you could tap into your aspirational capital, right? And your motivations for being in college. It's like, you know, I'm paying money to be here. I am here because I want to do big things in my life. And I need to understand what's going on if I'm going to get there. If I don't ask this question, things aren't going to go well for me on the midterm, and it's going to go downhill from there, right? And my dreams are too big to get stopped by my insecurity. So maybe that aspirational capital, right, can be an example, right? And it can help us by reminding us of our goals and why we should speak up. What about some other form of capital? Can anyone think of a relevant one?
I was going to say linguistic capital.
Okay.
And really just, I don't know, putting yourself out there, like it's gonna come out one way or another, and just, I don't, like that's what I do sometimes, like, oh, that's not what I wanted to say, but they got what I was trying to say. So
Yeah, we can make ourselves understood, right? We have multiple ways to make ourselves understood, right? That can be an advantage. Right?
Profe Poza, do you mind if I share?
Please do.
Because this is something that definitely speaks to me. When I was an undergrad, I was never one to raise my hand for sounding dumb, you know, and I was scared. So I'd actually rely on my social capital, which were my friends in my class. And I would tell them, hey, you know, I have this question to ask, but I'm afraid to do so. And they would motivate me. They're like, no, you got this. Like, just ask it. And if it doesn't come out right, like, we got your back. So really depending on my friends as my motivator. So that social capital really encouraged me and motivated me to ask the question. And to Jackie's point, even if it came out the way it came out, at least I put myself out there.
Yeah. And how many times have you talked to a friend and be like, yo, I really don't get this thing that they said today? And be like, yeah, me neither. Right. And nobody asked the question. Right. So you can always talk with your friends like, hey, I'll ask the question today, or I'll ask a question tomorrow, and you ask it the next day. Right. And we'll take turns being the ones who ask questions. Right. Yeah. So let's go to another one. All right. I'm struggling with Canvas and falling behind in class. Yeah. So how do these tools work? Similar, maybe. I don't want to ask questions, but right. Maybe my professor also doesn't really know how to use Canvas. Let's be honest. So, you know, so it's not like going to office hours would be that helpful for that one. Office hours are definitely something you should do, but maybe in this case. So who can you turn to?
That was pretty funny. I was gonna again, like the social capital, like finding the support from your peers. I have like a few peers that I reached out to, and they're like, "Oh, how do you find this, or where's this?" Just like asking for help, and like what you said, like reaching out to the professor as well.
And to make it easier, you can just send them a message. You don't have to like talk to them face to face. You can just make it so much easier for yourself just by sending a message.
Yeah, and so we can put that in our linguistic capital, right? Is that we have multiple ways to ask for that help, right? We can message, we can speak, we can. Yeah. All right, and let's take a look at the next one. All right, so I want to get more involved on campus, but all my time is taken up. So maybe you want to be part of more clubs. Maybe you want to go to more speaking events. What are some forms of cultural capital that can help you, or community cultural wealth that can help you manage that? Sorry, that's my daughter and father-in-law in the background. I'm leaning on my familial capital in these times of challenge for childcare. So, yeah. So how about it? How about ideas for getting involved on campus? Yeah. I think we could, probably tap into our social capital, right? And think about what friends might already be, right? What friends might already be involved with different groups and organizations, and that can tell us which ones to prioritize. Right? Consider maybe your aspirational capital, right? What is it that I am really seeking from my involvement, right? Do I want to meet people, like to build those kinds of social networks? Do I want to be part of something that's going to give me professional training, right? So maybe joining like a professional association on campus. Do I want to, advocate for social justice? And so maybe I want to be part of an activist organization on campus. right? Or a political organization on campus, right? Yeah, so, so, you know, using our goals to help prioritize.
You can always, let's say, get rid of things that you do throughout your day that you don't really find it beneficial for your career or your future in general, and then make space for what you actually want and what you actually need. And then maybe meet up with, let's say, a mentor and help them, and they can help you, navigate through certain clubs or other groups where you can share a community with.
Yeah, so put mentorship is another one, right? Being our social capital. And then there's that navigational dimension of knowing how to manage our schedules, knowing how to navigate sort of the requirements and things like that within a system, a bureaucratic system, so we can make sure we get those requirements handled. But then we're not doing anything beyond those requirements to make space for those things we want to do, right? So those are all ways that your community cultural wealth, right, can be leveraged to support you as you make your way through higher ed, right? Know that you're not alone, right? Know that you have friends, that you have mentors, you have supportive faculty, not all of them, but you know, enough, hopefully, right? Sorry, someone wants to make a cameo here, yeah. So you have these things at your disposal, and you have these things within you, right, that are going to help you to thrive. So, all right. So to kind of close things out, we have about a half hour left. What are some? Do you have any thoughts or questions that emerge for you from this talk? Let's go to the third one. Is there a form of cultural wealth that you want to be more conscious of and develop that might be helpful? So, and then we can think through some ways that you might do that, right? So, you know, right? So Jackie, you and your group, your partner kind of struggle to identify resistance capital, right? Maybe that's something that you want to identify and develop further, right? And so we can think about in what ways could you advance your resistance capital in your time at SJSU, right? Like what kinds of organizations or social networks could you connect with to build up that resistance capital, right? Yeah.
It would be good to become familiar with those that are have more authority at SJSU. So like the dean, the professors, and well, people that are more above the professors, so that if anything goes wrong in any of your classes or anything educational wise, you can talk with those people, and then together you guys can figure something out.
Yeah, right. Like getting to know someone at the administrative level. That's a really valuable form of social capital, right? Is to have those kind of relationships. And you know, you all are plugged into Centro, like you have access to that, right? So Dr. Barrera, who helped put together this slideshow, you know, she's now in the vice provost's office, right? She's an interim vice provost, right? Yeah, Lily notes in the chat that it's also a form of navigational capital, right? When you have those friends in administrative positions, they can really help you work around the, you know, the bureaucratic hurdles, right, that might be there. Also, so there's Dr. Barrera, and then, you know, there's also Dr. Pizarro. Marcos Pizarro is an associate dean in the College of Ed, holds office hours at Centro as well. And formerly, actually both Dr. Barrera and Dr. Pizarro have both formerly been chairs of Chicanic Studies, right? So they also know what it's like to be a chair of a department. Dr. Rebecca Burciaga, right, is a chair of the educational leadership program in the College of Ed, and she works with Centro on different projects, right? So you have access to those people in administrative capacities, right?
I would also say, like, just from my experience in general, from like on my undergrad and then like taking a break from school and then coming back this year, and really just seeing like, oh yeah, that was my question. How long has Centro been established for now?
This upcoming January will be 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like interesting. That's when I decided to take a break from school. Like all these success centers came up and about, and that's something I explained to my partner in our breakout room. Like, it's really amazing what San Jose State has done. Like, not just based on like your ethnicity or just like your interests and your college, and that's really I would say that's really important when it comes to like the resistance capital or the navigational capital too. And as a student of color, like these aren't things that are taught to you, and like the fact that it's just like a great first place to start off, like I that speaks a lot of volume. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, and you raise a really good point, right? So, I mentioned the folks who are in administrative capacities at Centro, but there are so many ways that that Centro helps with the navigational and the social capital side of things, right? We have Celinda Miranda, who comes from the counseling and psychological services, right? Who volunteers with Centro and supports students at Centro, because it can be intimidating, right? Find this building on campus, and especially in communities where mental health services are stigmatized, right? And it can be seen as weakness or something like that to seek counseling. Like, we don't want anyone to see us walking into CAPS, right? But you know what? You can talk to Celinda right here at Centro, and work through that, because obviously it's not, right? There's nothing weak about getting the help you need. But so yeah, the different advisors from various colleges, right, also come to Centro, and they can help you around program requirements and grad school applications and all that kind of navigational stuff. So I hadn't meant for this to be a giant plug for Centro, but I mean, Centro can be your one-stop shop to build out your 6 dimensions of community cultural wealth, right? Think about it as a place to meet friends and to meet mentors and to meet sources in different spheres of the university.
I wanted to just touch quickly upon, Jackie, you had asked the question about examples of resistance capital. And one of them definitely is, for example, there's all these policies and procedures that are in place at San Jose State for some students that really were well-intentioned to support our students, but maybe in practice they're not, and they're having the opposite impact, where they're actually creating more barriers for students. And so being able to question those and bringing it up to the university and saying, this isn't working and it's actually making things more complicated for me, like that in and of itself, questioning the policies and the procedures is a form of resistant capital, and making that known. Another example, I'll just share from my own experience in elementary school, when a teacher told me told my parents during a family parent-teacher meeting that I wasn't doing well in math, and that I was going to have a really hard time in the future, and that I was possibly going to fail my future math classes. And so that deficit thinking she had about me motivated me to prove her wrong. And so what I ended up doing was working with some of my peers and their parents who are really great at math. And so I got additional tutoring from them, and I ended up doing really well in my math class and proved my teacher wrong. And so I've heard that story multiple times, even here in college, where students are told from their faculty or even from other staff members, oh, you shouldn't go into the sciences, right? Because you barely passed with a C. And so the students are very much using their resistant capital to be like, no, I'm gonna prove this person wrong and do whatever strategies they gotta do, and they end up doing really well. So those are all different forms of resistant capital, as an example.
Thanks, Lily. Well, so maybe just to round things out, what's something that you're going to take away from this workshop? And so I invite you to just type something into the chat. What's one takeaway from this for you all? Yeah. Thank you, Liliana. Yeah, continue building. Yeah, right. And I like that metaphor because it means that the foundation is set, right? It means you already have something to build on, right? So,
Luis, do you mind reading them out loud since we're recording? And then
of
that way
course, yeah.
hear
So
what
yeah, so Liliana shared the importance of our strengths and seeing it not only within ourselves, but within others. Jackie shares that we have room for growth, but to continue building on our cultural wealth. Francisco says, I'm happy that I have a community that I can go to and many resources in the school that are beneficial for me. New suggests different aspects of my community cultural wealth. Yeah, it can be helpful to think about it in those dimensions, right? People will say like, well, build from your strengths. And be like, well, what strengths? But once we have this framework with the 6 dimensions, it can make it easier for us to appreciate what we have, those different aspects. Okay. All right. So I'll read them out as they come in. But in the meantime, so I have office hours through Centro from 12 to 1 every Thursday. And so the link for that is in the Ojo newsletter, and
I'll drop it into the chat right
Thank
now.
you. Yeah, great. So, or you can also certainly email me to set up a time, or you can book an appointment with the link that's there on the slideshow, and I'll also, I can put that in here too. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm happy to talk about this, happy to talk about, and anything else, academic, personal, social, right, whatever is coming up for you, right, to help you sort of thrive at San Jose State. Again, shout out to Centro and the Academic Resilience Series. The next session is Setting SMART Goals with Dr. Vicky Gomez, who's a professor in public health, and that'll be October 22nd from 1 to 2:30.
Thank you, Professor Poza, for such a wonderful presentation this afternoon. I encourage all of you to continue developing your community cultural wealth, and as Dr. Poza mentioned, using it to leverage what you're already bringing with you to the university and being able to navigate the institution, but also your everyday lives. And, we encourage you to continue reaching out for support. We're here as a community to support one another. We're always learning from you as well. So thank you so much for engaging us. And I do want to invite you all, if you would like to join us this evening as part of our Latinx Heritage Month programming, we'll have tonight we're having our open mic night in collaboration with Mosaic. And so we're featuring 2 amazing poets and also opening up the floor. If anybody here is feeling empowered and energized to want to also share with the community any pieces you'd like, you'll be able to do that as well. So again, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you at the next ARS session, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Gracias.
¿Quieres despedirte, amor?
Bye.
Gracias.
Okay, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.